Hi, this is Alex Traiman, CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief of Jewish News Syndicate. I'm here in our Jerusalem studios with my dear friend, Elan Carr, who has become recently the CEO of the Israeli American Council, the IAC, one of the largest and I believe one of the most important Jewish organizations in the United States today and within the greater Jewish people today. So Elan, welcome to JNS. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the nice words. And Alex, it's always great to be with you. Thank you for everything you do, your coverage and the strength of JNS and what you bring to the Jewish people and really to the world by shining a light on such important stories and really giving coverage that is excellent and fair and penetrating. So thank you. And it's great to be with you.
Thanks, and I really appreciate that. Tell the people that are watching a little bit about your background. I mean, I know we could spend, maybe half an hour on that just by itself, but on one foot, just that the people understand where you're coming from in order to be in this position now.
Well, I've been all my life focused on service to the United States, my country. I served in uniform. I was in law enforcement. I was a criminal prosecutor, gang prosecutor in LA. I served as a U.S. Army officer, including a year in Iraq. And so service to country, service to the Jewish people. I was involved for many, many years. As you know, you're my AEPI brother, and I was the international president of AEPI because I felt that investing in the future leaders of the Jewish people is the most important investment we can make. And so I had the great privilege of leading AEPI, and then I was appointed to be a United States Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. And so I had the tremendous honor of both serving the United States and having my job be fighting for the Jewish people throughout the world and really leading all U.S. policy globally on this fight against this vicious scourge of Jew hatred, ancient and yet modern and relentless scourge of Jew hatred. And so that was my background, and now I'm so proud and so honored to be leading an organization which I have to say, thank you for the compliment, but I have to say I agree, a dynamic, forward-leaning, high-impact Jewish organization that creates that deeply needed fusion and joint identity between the Israeli American community and the Jewish American community. At once,
Tell me a little bit about like the role of Israelis in America. How many Israelis are there in America?
A great many, Sure, a great many. There are anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million Israeli Americans, depending on how you count kids and so on. It's a lot. And so IAC was founded 17 years ago for the purpose of helping unify the Israeli American community and making the Israeli American voice a critical, essential component of the American Jewish world. That's why IAC was founded, also to strengthen, invest in, and strengthen the Jewish and Israeli identity of the next generation. That we all do, but what's evolved over the years is that by equal measure, it's so important to teach American Jews what it is to be Israeli. Because the fact of the matter is, being Israeli, the language, right? The Hebrew language isn't just the Israeli language. It's the language of the Jewish people. And the idea of Jewish sovereignty and understanding what living in the Jewish homeland under Jewish sovereignty is something that belongs to all Jews. And so really, the essence of IAC is to bring the Israeli American voice and ethos into the Jewish American experience and really create a joint identity whereby Israeli Americans and Jewish Americans are entirely together and unified in how we approach our identity, the future generation, but also the great challenges affecting us today. And you know so much about those challenges.
Yeah, Elan, obviously a lot of American Jews, come to Israel, they visit regularly, but not all American Jews. A lot of American Jewry doesn't really know Israel that well. They don't understand Israel that well. Even if they come, they maybe don't understand it that well. It's a complicated little country we have over here. And then obviously Israelis love to travel, and many Israelis have gone to the United States, but not all Israelis, and not all Israelis really understand America. And here you have a population of maybe close to 1 million Israelis that live in America that actually have an understanding of both what makes Israel Israel and what makes America America, and essentially have the opportunity to serve as a bridge between these two poles of world Jewry.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you described it perfectly. And that's one of the most essential defined missions of IAC is to be that bridge and to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship and to build bonds between the peoples of the United States and Israel. And our community does that every day. It's important to note that IAC is not only an organization of positions and advocacy. We advocate and we have positions, but ultimately, IAC is a community-based organization, a national community-based organization built upon families and kids and adults and grandparents and siblings. And so we have, hundreds of thousands of Israeli Americans, a substantial percentage of which we engage all the time. These are community members that turn out in good times to celebrate Israel and rejoice in Yom HaAtzmaut or Purim or various events, but also turn out in bad times. And we have seen that par excellence since October 7th, where our community has been at the forefront of leading the fight for the Jewish people in the state of Israel in the United States.
Well, tell me what some of those activities look like. How have you been able to do that?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, like I said, turning out mass amounts of people across the country. Again, only a community-based organization can do that. We sprung to action after October 7th, and from Boston through Austin to Los Angeles and everywhere in between, mass amounts of our community members took to the streets and had rallies demanding that the United States support Israel unequivocally and unconditionally, demanding that our hostages be freed by Hamas. This was from day one we did this, including a very highly publicized one where we closed the northern part of Times Square. We had every digital billboard surrounding Times Square with pictures of hostages, and we held a rally in that, cross that intersection of the world that Times Square is. And it was a very, very important event in the heart of New York to say, that's it. This is the time that the United States needs to stand with Israel. Then fast forward, and there's I'll cover some of the other things we're doing, but fast forward when the campuses exploded and became even worse, let's say 3 months ago, IAC was the first organization to jump into the fray with massive rallies on campuses or next to campuses at UCLA, at Columbia, at MIT, at GW, on many campuses across the country, where we came and showed that much-needed solidarity with students, with Jewish students and Jewish faculty who are pro-Israel, who are, frankly, Alex, besieged, suffering unbelievable harassment and discrimination. And we leapt into the action and brought much-needed strength and solidarity to campuses.
Elan, it's like, on the one hand, it's great that you did it. On the other hand, that IAC was the first one to do this. It's strange, right? You would have imagined that all of the legacy Jewish organizations would have jumped, to help the students on the campus. What did you understand that maybe some of the leaders of the other Jewish organizations didn't understand?
Well, I should mention we had many partners. We led the effort, and then many organizations joined us, and we're very happy to join us. I think that the majority opinion is, okay, now the time has come that we need to do this. I think some organizations were worried about, making waves. Maybe the situation will be worse. Maybe we shouldn't create, so conflict on campus. And look, part of the value to the Jewish community, because again, IAC is a Jewish organization. We're not an Israeli organization. We bring the Israeli American community into the Jewish community, and we create that joint identity. But we're a Jewish organization, and the value of IAC is to bring that Israeli perspective, which is different. It's more forward-leaning, right? It's more it's more muscular, to use a word.
Like we see, like here on October 7th, instead of people running away from the crisis, you had thousands and thousands of people, some who had served in the military, some who were volunteers of organizations like United Hatzalah and others, just race down towards the conflict, right? Like Israelis go to the fire. So maybe that's something that you understood, that the fire is on the campus and we have to go descend on the fire to help our Jewish brethren.
Correct. And that's exactly right. And that's how we do everything that we do. Look, it's not only rallies. Rallies are important because you want to demonstrate solidarity. We have, so I said it's a community-based organization, but over that community is overlaid our programming infrastructure, which is robust. So we have a whole department devoted to fighting anti-Semitism. And it's not only reactive. Incidentally, since October 7th, our staff, we've handled over 600 individual cases of anti-Semitism involving students. 600, 300 in K through 12, 300 in universities. Now, when I say handled, Alex, I don't mean, we made a declaration or we condemned. I mean intensive caseworking, meeting with families, going to school board meetings, going to DEI meetings. I mean, really intense caseworking, 600 of those since October 7th. And so even there, you see, it's not only about rallies and taking to the streets. We do that better than anybody, but it's also about being aggressive in confronting challenges and threats and in advocating for our rights, something that, of course, Israel and the Israeli ethos is famous for. But, I'll tell you something about fighting anti-Semitism. We're not only reactive at handling these many, many cases of harassment and discrimination and violence, terrible stuff, also proactive. Since October 7th, we have trained, you ready for this? We have trained nearly 2,000 teachers in public schools on anti-Semitism, on anti-Zionism, on Jewish peoplehood, on the connection of the Jewish people to the state of Israel, on the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. Now, you talk about impact. Think about one teacher, right? 30, 40 in a public school, 40 kids in a class after class after class. That's one teacher. We've trained nearly 2,000 since October 7th, and we're coming into schools and we're forward leaning and we don't wait. We go first. As you said, we rush into the fire because we know we're at a crossroads and we have to mobilize our community, unite not only Israeli Americans, but unite the Jewish American community and rush to defend ourselves because we are under attack. And only when we're unified and together, biyachad nenatzach, we need to unify and we need to rush into the fight, and fight we are.
You've specialized in anti-Semitism for a number of years as a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism in the Trump administration. How do you explain this scourge of anti-Semitism and particularly the explosion of anti-Semitism in America after October 7th, when the entire world saw what some of the worst terror organizations in the world, Hamas, Hezbollah, all sponsored by Iran, the world's greatest leading sponsor of state terrorism, have perpetrated in an absolute massacre on the Jewish people. And we thought we were victims. And now all of a sudden it's been turned on its head. And we're just seeing this tremendous rise in not only violent anti-Semitism, but also in like the soft anti-Semitism on social media and in all forms, in politics and everywhere.
Well, you're exactly right. And, anti-Semitism has been rising for about 20 years now. And we saw this also in the Second Intifada, where, Jews are slaughtered in Israel and we see campuses go crazy, right? But a lot of the world didn't pay attention to this. Even some of the Jewish organizations said, oh, well, it's just a blip and everyone gets it now. I mean, since October 7th, the fact that the most horrendous and savage pogrom since the Holocaust would not only not have the effect of embarrassing the anti-Semites of the world into silence, even for a short period of time, but had the opposite effect. The fact that savagery in all of its barbarous medieval cruelty would cause the anti-Semites of the world to come out of the woodwork and with unvarnished, unhinged vehemence against our people, demand more of the same. Let's be clear. That's what this is. They demanded more of the same. They saw what happened. They know what happened. to babies, to women. And they said, Intifada revolution, globalize the Intifada, meaning bring it here. Let's not stop there. Let's do this to all the Jews in the world. Or from the river to the sea, let's do that to every person who lives in Israel. This is an absolute disgrace. It is horrific, and it forces us, it compels us to realize what is going on here. And what is going on here is deep, vicious, hostile hatred of the Jewish people. And we see the results of anti-Semitism there in the Middle East, because only hatred could make people capable of doing what these terrorists did to our brothers and sisters. But we also see the results of Jew hatred here. And the fact that many of our authority figures in certain states, governments, mayors, are allowing this to happen, are allowing campuses to be taken over, that Jews can't access parts of campus, can't get to class. This is absolutely unacceptable. And that's why IAC is in the action together with other Jewish organizations in partnership. And we are saying, not on our watch. We are not going to let this happen, and we're going to fight back.
Yeah, you mentioned that this anti-Semitism really came out of the woodwork, right? So obviously it's clear that anti-Semitism had been working in the shadows. People that were aware saw this, in the comments on news articles, for many years in the talkbacks on YouTube videos. It was there, and it was latent and it was in the shadows, but now what was in the shadows has come out to the surface. And can we really succeed in putting the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, and pushing the anti-Semitism back down into the shadow?
Yeah, so let me say something about the shadows. And you're right, in many cases it was. But let me tell you where it wasn't in the shadows, and hasn't been in the shadows since the Second Intifada, since 2001, and certainly since the Durban Conference, is on campus. I mean, it's been over on campus. It's taught in classes. The new anti-Semitism, that brands Jews as white oppressor colonialists, and certainly the state of Israel that way, and defines people of color, regardless of their skin color, defines as people of color as perpetual victims from whom nothing should be expected, and who can't be criticized for any conduct because they have every right to rip the system apart. This is an ideology, a neo-Marxist ideology, that is orthodoxy on campus and has been orthodoxy on campus for a long time. What hasn't happened is that the good folks and many in the Jewish world, and also many in the American experience, haven't really focused on this and said, we can't allow our most important asset, our kids to be indoctrinated in this poisonous, anti-American, anti-Western, and of course, anti-Semitic ideology. That's what didn't happen. And so it hasn't been in the shadows on campus. And look, who would be reasonable to think that what is preached openly in the most important institutions of education in America won't eventually spill out into all parts of society, including...
Not only that, I mean, we're already seeing the graduates of these Middle East studies programs, on universities and Ivy Leagues. They're already in the halls of Congress. They're already having positions, maybe junior positions in State Department and Defense Department and others. So it's actually spilling out from the university into policy.
Correct. And when it's spilled out is when people said, oh my God, what is going on here? What are we hearing in the halls of Congress? What's being said? And what I would always say to people back then, including when I was in government, is, listen, what these people are saying is preached openly on campuses. This is nothing new. But what's happened is we're not fixing the problem at its source. And so now, to answer your question, can we roll this back? Let me be clear to all of our viewers, 100% yes. If I weren't optimistic, I wouldn't have taken the appointment in the Trump administration, and I wouldn't be leading the IAC now. There is no question that if we are unified and if we take the right actions together, we absolutely can roll this back. Not only contain it, but roll it back. But that requires a muscular, strong, aggressive, forward-leaning approach. Not only to defend ourselves, yes, certainly that, but also to go on the offense. This is a war. Let's be clear. There's a war. There's a kinetic war against the Jewish people in the Middle East. But there is another war. There's an ideological war against the Jewish people everywhere else in the world. And in order to fight a war, I'm an Army officer, 22 years in the U.S. military. Let me tell you, you don't win only by playing defense. You have to defend yourself, but you also have to go on the offense. And if we do that, Alex, there's no question that we'll win. I want you to know the majority of Americans look at what's going on and are revolted. They're disgusted to their core when they see these people who want to dismantle America. They want to destroy the United States of America, and patriotic Americans are looking at this and they're disgusted. At IAC rallies, those rallies we talked about that we brought solidarity to the campus, to the students, to Times Square, you see American flags all over. You see patriotism. You hear the Star-Spangled Banner being sung, and Hatikva, and the Israeli flags, because you know what? Philo-Semitism is American values, and anti-Semitism represents the absolute apex, the exemplar of anti-American and anti-Western values. So what's really going on here, Alex, this is a fight for Western civilization. And more people are realizing it, which is why I know that if we do the right thing and if we unify, we will win.
Right. And we saw that example when Netanyahu gave his speech to the joint sessions of Congress, that you had and what was called an anti-Israel rally at the Union Station in downtown Washington, D.C. But what did they do at that rally? They took down the American flag from the top of Union Station and they replaced it with a Palestinian flag. And then they defaced monuments with spray paint saying Hamas is coming. Right. So, and I thought this was very important that Americans would see. They weren't burning Israeli flags. They weren't saying we stand with America and we don't want America to stand with Israel. They burned the American flag at the rally that was supposed to be supposedly anti-Israel rally. They're clearly against Israel and clearly against America and against all of Western society for them.
No question about that. And it's not only Union Station. By the way, I had the great privilege of being in the House gallery for the Prime Minister's speech, which was a thrill. But it's not.
As was I.
Yeah,
I was there too.
Remember, I saw you. But it wasn't. It's not only at Union Station. I mean, that was an egregious example. But this has been happening all over. They're burning American flags. They're taking American flags down and raising Palestinian flags. We saw that at UNC, and I'm so proud that students stood up and fought against that. And incidentally, A. Pi was one of there were three fraternities, and A. Pi brothers leapt to the action and said, "You're not going to take down my flag," and put that, and they defended the flag. And so it's important that we remember all of these hopeful signs that Americans, ordinary Americans, proud Americans, patriotic Americans, won't have it. They won't have this, and that's why we're going to win. So Union Station is an example. At GW, they dressed the statue of George Washington in a keffiyeh and a Palestinian flag. I mean, it's appalling, and that's why again we have to stand together and realize that we're defending all of our civilization against this assault, this demonic, vicious, and primitive assault against our values.
Elan, one of my favorite departments that you have at IAC is you have like a little boutique lobbying organization that works on the state level with the IAC for Action, which is run by my good friends Joseph Ogg, Jake Bennett. And tell me a little bit about the work that they've done on the state level to fight against BDS, to make sure that all states are adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and much more.
Yeah, Joe and Jake, I'm so happy you mentioned them. They're amazing. So that's another example of how proactive and forward-leaning IAC is. We've worked with state legislators across the country, bipartisan fashion, to help them craft legislation that protects the Jewish people, whether it's anti-BDS laws or adoption and implementation. It's very important. Adopting the IRA definition without using it doesn't do that much, but adopting and implementing the IRA definition is what IAC does through IAC for Action. And I had the great privilege of being at signing ceremonies across the country where governors in ceremonies have said, I am signing this IRA law that not only adopts but uses IRA to determine whether it's anti-Semitic harassment or discrimination or hate crimes. And I'm proud to sign it because my state is standing with the Jewish people unequivocally. And that's what these governors are saying. I was with Governor Noem in South Dakota and Governor McMaster in South Carolina and Governor Kemp in Georgia And the list goes on. Governor Sununu, New Hampshire, just signed the IRA legislation. All of these bills are bills that IAC was integrally involved in helping craft and helping pass. And so here's another example of, we are operating simultaneously on many, many fronts. And not only, by the way, with regard to anti-Semitism, we have a whole department, Alex, that focuses on Jewish and Israeli identity for the next generation. We have programs for little kids. We have programs for teens. We have programs for college students. And so it's all about Jewish pride and Jewish unity and Jewish continuity and fighting anti-Semitism reactively and proactively and protecting the Jewish people and producing a united, strong, powerful, influential community that makes a difference for the future of not only the United States, but for the future of the Jewish people. That's what IAC does every day, and I couldn't be prouder.
Now, the IAC also has one of the largest pro-Israel conferences in the United States every year, annual conference. And now you're having your IAC Summit. It's going to be in September in Washington, D.C. Tell me a little bit about what we can expect at the summit.
Well, this is actually critical. And now that AIPAC policy conference sadly no longer happens, IAC National Summit is the largest Jewish conference in America. And first of all, Alex, thank you for coming. I know you're going to be there, and we're thrilled. And to all of our viewers, come. This is the time to celebrate together, also to mourn, commemorate October 7th together, but to influence together. Most importantly, to influence together. We selected Washington, D.C. this year because we thought it was critically important before the elections to come to Washington. Look, IAC is apolitical. See, we're here to say we're American citizens and we have demands. Regardless of who wins, we are here to say we have demands and we have expectations of our government. That's what we're coming to Washington to do. There are going to be thousands of us. We have amazing speakers and presenters, including senior levels of government. The most pro-Israel elected officials in America are going to be there. We have experts on Iran. We have a whole panel on Iran and the influences of Iran, and participants in that panel are people who wrote the sanctions on Iran. We have experts on IDF ethics. We have a whole program highlighting how proud the whole world should be, Alex, not just Israel, how proud the world should be of the IDF and of IDF ethics. So not only we're not just defending ourselves, we're saying shame on all of you to criticize the IDF. The IDF is a model army. We have a whole panel that John Spencer and Richard Kemp are part of our panel to talk about IDF ethics. I mean, we're on all fronts, and plus, it's also fun. It's got the Israeli-American ethos, right? So it's not only a conference. It's not only, we're going to hear great presenters and learn. Yeah, we're going to learn together. But we're also going to have a great time. And we have Israeli artists and performers coming from Israel. We're just going to end with a concert. We have Shabbat together. We have a big Shabbat dinner together and a Kabbalat Shabbat together. This is going to be tremendously, tremendously powerful. We have also, by the way, members of our Christian community coming, including Kufi and other great Christian organizations. They're going to come and be with us and show their support for the Jewish people and the state of Israel, and ultimately, like I said, of support for American values. This is going to be an incredible time, and not only will it be fun and informative and in many ways transformative, but most importantly, look, for all of us watching who say, look, what can I do? How often do you get that question, Alex? What can I do? The world is on fire. Things are falling apart. I don't know how I can help. I don't know what I can do to make the world a better place. Well, I'll tell you what you can do. You can stand together, shoulder to shoulder, with thousands of patriotic Americans who are pro-Israel in the capital of the most powerful country in the history of the world, and make sure that our priorities and our interests and our defense of American values and our philo-Semitism is heard, listened to, and acknowledged, and is part of the policies that are going to be made in Washington, D.C. That's what you can do. And so come to Washington September 19 to 21. Go to IAC360.org and register for our summit. Let me tell you, tickets are selling fast. We already have well over 1,000 tickets are selling fast. And pretty soon there won't be tickets and there won't be hotel rooms. So So go online and register, and we'll see you there. It's going to be a tremendous.
I better book my hotel room.
Well, you know people, so we'll make sure. We're not going to let you be on a park bench.
I appreciate that, Elan. You said that the conference is taking place in DC, and it's ahead of a incredible election taking place in the United States. It feels like the stakes have never been higher. That the direction of the country is at stake. It's not clear even at this moment, that there's strong American leadership. Tell me, what have you been doing in the run up to the elections and going to the various conferences of each party? Tell me a little bit about.
Well,
you said you're apolitical or bipartisan, but tell me what does that look like ahead of the election?
So we're apolitical. We have to be. We're a 501c3 organization, so we don't take partisan sides. But we say, look, we are going to forcefully advocate for the Jewish people and for Jewish interests, and that's what we do. Look, we had a presence at the RNC in Milwaukee. There were protests against America and against Israel. We were there in force. We had mobile billboards surrounding the convention center, talking about our hostages and our pride in being American Zionists. Right? We said proud American Zionists. So we had that presence in Milwaukee, in Chicago next week. Our intention is to have a very big presence, especially since our enemies, the enemies of America and the enemies of the Jewish people, are descending en masse onto Chicago to disrupt the goings-on and to disrupt our democratic process in Chicago. And so we're saying, listen, we need to be there as well. I'll tell you though, unfortunately, the city of Chicago hasn't granted IAC a permit to have a pro-America and pro-Israel rally in Chicago during the DNC. They granted a permit to the anti-Israel and anti-American forces to have a rally in right outside the United Center in Chicago, but they're not granting us a permit. And that's an example. We sometimes have to deal with hostility even from our elected officials, which is really sad and really pathetic. That's why it's so urgent that we stand up and fight for our rights. We were denied advertising in the airports of Chicago, where we tried to show pictures on digital billboards of U.S. citizens held hostages in Gaza. American citizens, they said, no, we're not going to let you do that. And no, there's no change you can make to the content that would allow you to advertise it on our billboards. This is the city of Chicago saying this. And so it is a rank violation of the First Amendment. It's content-based discrimination. And that's what the city of Chicago is doing. We see this. We see leaders like this in some of our cities. We see members of Congress like this who just hate Israel and frankly, I would say hate American values. And so this is why it is so important for IAC to have a presence, not only in Chicago, but everywhere, and to stand up and say, we are here to stay. The Jewish people are not going to be quiet. We're going to stand up and we're going to defend our rights as Americans. And we're going to make sure that our country changes. We're going to make sure that the United States embodies the values on which this country was built. We're going to make sure of it. And we're going to be very loud until that happens. That's what we're here to do. And that's what we're going to do in Chicago one way or another.
Oh, Elan Carr, CEO of the Israeli American Council. I'm certainly glad that you are the right man at the right time to lead this organization while the Jewish people are really trying to figure out themselves and how to overcome these unique challenges, both in the United States and in the state of Israel. I do urge people to go to the summit if possible. Go to the website. You said it's IAC360.org. And if you want to know what else you can do, you can like this video, you can share this video, you can go to the JNS TV YouTube channel, look at our other interviews and analysis, and go to our flagship website, jns.org, sign up for our daily newsletter, get yourself informed. Make sure that you have the right information from the right source, that you can educate others with good information. You'll have the tools that you need to share, to convince other people, and to do your part to help and to stand with the Jewish people in these times. So I want to thank you, Elan, for joining us here on JNS TV. Thank you to all the viewers who stuck with us, and we will see you next time.
Great to be with you, Alex. Thanks.